Hey there. Happy Friday the 13th. Scream Team, what is going on? How is everyone doing tonight on this holiest of horror days, other than Halloween, of course? Uh, what's going on? Michael Evans, hey. Graciela, Joe, Garrison, Amethyst, Eric, Matthias, the Carnage Count, XSR, COD Gamer X, Yo Yo Yo, EJ Webbs, LSN Edits, uh, Layla, Robbie, Layla is clumsy, Horror Geek Pass. How's everyone doing? Oh man, it feels like it's been a really long time since I've done a solo live stream. Hey Nathan. Um, and yeah, full disclosure, what I was gonna do was just make a video of a Friday the 13th tier ranking because it's been so long since I've done a ranking that I figured, every couple of years, like I change my opinion on these movies. So I figured I was gonna do that, but there just hasn't been any time. I mean, like that's why it's like I haven't really been making a lot of YouTube videos in general because I've been so busy. But I was gonna do that, and then I thought a live stream would be much more fun, and then also I wouldn't have to edit. Um, so the as we all know, the editing process is always the hardest, and it's a tier list. We can do it this way. It's gonna be more fun, and I brought some friends with me. So here's my Jason Part Two figure. Get him a little more in focus here. He's got his pitchfork. Come on, man. Show up there. Yeah. I've had this for a really long time. I don't. But whenever this first came out, look at that blood stain on the overalls there. I think he also comes with a pickaxe. It's somewhere around here, but always really loved Part Two, Jason, and he's got like the little stand with the Part Two. Yeah, just the sack head always. It always seems scarier to me. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of bring out my Friday the 13th swag. I've also got this guy here who looks like he's like ripped right out of Scooby Doo. Really fun. I've actually got like a whole bunch of them. They're called Toonie Terrors, I think. NECA. There's a Ghostface one too, but for the sake of Friday the 13th, I just wanted to do the Jason stuff tonight. Sackhead Jason is the Jason. The bag is scarier. Very true. So yeah, I figured tonight, within the next hour or so, was kind of hang out. I'll do my updated ranking, and this will be interesting because I've never ranked anything in real time, so it'll be fun to see people's reactions in real time. It'll be fun to see like the subscriber count go down in real time because I know that there's gonna be some upsets for some people. That's for damn sure. But I mean, there are 12 movies in this franchise. Like the uh, the combinations and permutations of like however many, like, let's just put it this way: if you found another person living on this planet who had the exact same Friday the 13th ranking as you, that would be a pretty fucking special thing because, like, with all these movies, there's millions of different ranking combinations. So, good luck to all the people that think that their list is the right one. This is just for shits and gigs. But as always, this is a live stream here, so um, if anyone wants to get their questions or comments in, send a super chat over. Really helpful to me. It goes to support the channel and everything that I do. And we'll get your question or comment read above anyone else. And yeah, here's the thing. Like, I don't know what is going on with this franchise. I know that Crystal Lake was kind of canceled, at least the Brian Fuller version. I think that there's like a new version of that on the horizon. There's this Jason Universe thing. I don't know anything about that. You guys are probably gonna have to fill me in on information because I just have not been keeping track of anything. Hey Sarah, and yeah, let's chat about that. I mean, I don't really have a lot of Friday the 13th stuff. Like, I have this shirt. I think this is the only Friday the 13th short that I have. But I do have this, which actually Eric is here in the chat. But this is I don't know what language that is, but this is a signed Friday the 13th Part 2 fan art featuring Amy Steele. She signed it right over here. That's her signature. Eric Champney got me this for my birthday last year, 2 years ago. But this is really cool. I love Ginny. Ginny is like one of, if we're doing like the Mount Rushmore of Final Girls, Ginny would be on my Mount Rushmore, along with Sydney and Nancy, and I'd have to think about that. Not Lori. To all those Jamie Lee Curtis stands. I don't know. I just can't, like, with her and like the 15 different versions of the character. Like, it's all over the place. It's German. 13 Gun? Am I saying it right? Gun. But where's the part 2 of it all? So I got that. I've got some Steele books, some Amy Steele books. See what I did there? Just the first 3. Because I know they've been releasing them. And there's literally there's like no features on these. Like, it's kind of useless. I do like the part 3 and the part 1 like have this like glossy finish to it, but this one for part 2 is like more matte. I don't know, I just prefer that. Like, it looks so much cleaner, doesn't pick up dust, although there's a little ding in it. And on the back it's just you're doomed, you're all doomed, and a little Ralph with the bicycle. They all have little things on the back. The first one is kill her mommy, kill her. There should be a comma after kill her, but oh well. Because then it's like, kill her mommy. And then the part 3 is be right back. Who said be right back in 3? That's the trivia for you guys tonight. Who said that? And I actually don't know. So someone figure that out for me. And then I got this bad boy here too. The complete set from Shout Factory. This came out several years ago. Not my favorite set. I wish that they did a lot more for it, to be honest. But the Halloween set that came out in 2014 was phenomenal, and that's when it was 10 movies in that franchise. But this one's got all 12. There we go. All 12, and then a bonus disc and a little booklet there too. And me being weird and eclectic, I like to flip the inserts around so each spine has a different look to it. But I know that there's a more uniformed look you can get if you leave them as is. But I'll take each one out as we go through the movies. But yeah, I guess we can like start getting into this. I'll slowly rank them. Let me make this big and I'll make me small. I guess I should like move myself up. There we go. And let's do that. I guess we don't. We just need that. But yeah. Just catching up on the comments here. Maybe Kirsty after you stand Ashley Lawrence in the Hellraiser 2 pod. Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, because there's Ripley. There's also a strong case for Jodie Foster and Silence of the Lambs, but I like Kirsty. I was gonna say Christy. Kirsty. Super chat from Fishboy671. Thank you for the $5. Not Friday the 13th related, but what do you think is going to happen with the Scream franchise with Jenna and Melissa being gone? I mean, like, what's gonna happen with it? Like in terms of success, popularity, or just in terms of the story? Because I know the story, as far as I know, it's just kind of reverting back to Sydney, in that sense. But with them being gone, I don't know. I don't think that it's really going to change much of the trajectory. I know that there's a lot of people who are very unhappy about that. And to be perfectly frank, I'm not 100% kosher with it either, because I really would have liked to see a resolution to that storyline with them. I think that there was so much more to tell. I don't think that Six really did a great job of really, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it just felt like the same story and character beats just repeated over for another one. So I mean, you could look at it like if there was a seventh movie with Sam and Tara, Six might have just been an acceptable bridge, and then we could really kind of delve into some fun stuff with Seven. So yeah, I mean, I'm disappointed, but I mean, it's Scream. I'm gonna see these movies as long as they make them. So personally, I'll be there. I don't think that it's going to have an overarching effect on it, like some people might think it will. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, there's so many factors that go into a movie's success, and that's just a very marginal aspect of it in terms of the cast. But yeah, so let's talk about the rankings here, the tiers. The tiers. By the way, did anyone figure out who said this quote in part three? Be right back. I'm thinking like maybe not Shelley. Did Vera say it? I don't know. Somebody figure that out, and I'll keep an eye on the chat. But let's talk about the tiers, because I very specifically give them quotes as to what they mean, and I don't even we'll go through them. So let's start at the top. An American original, which is from the first movie. That's what Annie says to Enos in the truck when he's like calling her a dumb kid, and she's like, "You're an American original," and then he says, "Me, me, 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 me." So, the way I considered is like, this is an American original. It's a classic horror movie, whatever goes there. It's one for the ages. I'm guessing it was the pregnant girl who said, "Be right back." Oh, Debbie? He was getting a beer. No, was it Andy? The guy walking on his hands, Handy Andy. Okay. So one below an American original is Jesus Christmas, which is spoken by Axel in the final chapter. And Why Jesus Christmas? I don't know. I guess there's just like, I mean, he says it in more of a negative connotation. It's just like there's all these expletives in there. But I see it more of just like Jesus Christmas. Like there's excitement. It's not top tier, but like, yeah, we're excited. Like Jesus Christmas. Below that is you need a little touch up work. And I forget the character's name who says it. It's the redhead girl who says it to the character. Okay, it's part 7. The characters in that movie, like it's such a motley crew of people. Like none of them would be friends. It's like they just kind of like picked an archetype from every corner of every possible teenager that exists in the 80s. So I don't even remember their names. I remember Tina and the bitchy girl with the pearls was Melissa. And then Dr. Cruz, Bad News Cruz. And Nick was the love interest. Robin, Amethyst, you are a lifesaver today. But what was the name of the girl? Maddie. See, I sometimes I remember. I'm here to be Zach's fact checker. Yes, you are. But what I never understood is that she kind of like she does a little touch up work, and then she says in the mirror, "Need a little touch up work, my ass." And it's just like, but you just touched yourself up. So what do you mean your ass? Anyway, as the quote suggests, this is the tier for things that are you could use a little work. Then they might then be Jesus Christmas, but in this case, they are, you need a little touch-up work. Fourth tier is say hi to mommy in hell. Which, I mean, this could be interchangeable with the last one. I think that there's still, maybe why it's not the worst is because there's like, say hi to mommy. You know, it's like, there's still some good. It's like, you're going to see your mother. So say hi to her. But in hell. So that's said by... Oh, fuck. Amanda Rigetti is the actress. Was the character's name? Whitney. Whitney and Clay Miller. Whitney Miller in Friday the 13th, 2009. I feel pretty proud of myself right now. There's like hundreds of characters in these movies. And to remember their last name too. What was her name now? Robin. What was Robin's last name? Amethyst. Do you know that? Get a little challenge for you there. And then this sucks on so many levels is the bottom tier because I mean like that's what else is gonna go there. This sucks on so many levels. It's just the suckage is. There's a multitude of it. Many levels of suckage. It's just a big sucky suck fest. And there might be some movies that wind up here. We'll see. And this was said by Janessa in Jason X right before she got sucked out of the spaceship. So there's that. Now, just for a little bit of context, the way that I kind of rank things is more on a letterboxed scale. So think of it more as just like an American original would be 5 stars, and This Sucks on So Many Levels would be 1 star. And then I guess like the half stars. So like This Sucks on So Many Levels would be half a star and 1 star. And then one up from that would be 1.5 and 2, and then 2.5 and 3, and 3.5 and 4, and 4.5 and 5. So it's not necessarily contextual to what the quote is. I just put the quote there because it's a little bit of flair that, I thought would make it fun. So yeah, anyway, there's that. Big Sucky Suckfest is the name of my porno. What a coincidence. Thank you, Bruce. Anyway, so here we are with Friday the 13th, 1980, the original. And this movie gets a lot of shit. And I don't understand why. Like, I guess when people look at it, they're just like, it's not even the best Friday the 13th movie. No, it's not. It's very basic. It's pretty much just like it's Sean Cunningham just kind of taking tropes and cliches of, like from Halloween, and kind of putting it into this camp setting. And, he struck a gold mine with it. But in terms of like, his abilities as a director, there's nothing really going on here. Like, there's a lot of filler. This is almost like the I know some of you guys must be Disney fans, but like, do you remember the old Cinderella, or I guess like the Cinderella? I don't talk about like the live action remakes, but the Cinderella. If you watch that movie, so much of it is just mice. It's just the mice, and they're like doing the mice things, and like the cat's chasing them around, and it's exhausting. And like, there's really not much of like Cinderella-ing. And what I kind of take from Friday the 13th is that a lot of it is just filler. There's like all these vignettes of just like, they're in the cabin and there's a snake and we're gonna like kill the snake and now we know what's for dinner, and then eventually they start picking them off one by one. But the movie really doesn't happen for me until Mrs. Voorhees shows up, because then it's just amazing. And I don't know if it would have been more amazing if she had been there for most of the movie, or it's amazing because they kind of like held off on her till just the right minute. She's got like, I mean, like from the moment she arrives on the screen until like she's killed by Alice is exactly 13 minutes, which I think is pretty cool. But those 13 minutes are fabulous, and it's just like everything about this is so quotable. It's just such a good time. Like, obviously there's a lot of nonsense to go through to get to the end, but I always have a good time. Like, I feel like I'm watching a lovely slice of Americana, not an American original, but just like enough that it's something that I do really appreciate. So I'm gonna say this is Jesus Christmas. It's given me those like excitable Christmas Jesus vibes. I'm happy to put it there. I think that for what it is, because you could look at like a lot of the copycat slasher movies that were coming out in the 80s. Friday the 13th is actually a very competently made movie. Like, it's copying, I guess let's just say Halloween in this case. Like, it's copying Halloween in all the right ways. Like, it's doing the things, it's doing the homages or whatever, but the right ones. And I think a lot of the times, especially in the 80s, we would see slasher movies that copied better slasher movies, but were copying the wrong things. And this really is a testament to the franchise that they were able to make 11 sequels because they did a good job the first time. So I think this is a good movie. Anyone who tells you it's not, or it's the worst Friday the 13th movie, I don't know what to say about that. But that's where this one is. Let's check in on the comments. Fry House, there is not a single horror franchise where the first one is my favorite other than American Psycho. Aren't there just two? Is that can we classify? I guess it's a franchise if there's two. So yeah, obviously, because that second American Psycho was not any good. Goddamn Fry House, you got hotter takes than me, says Bruce. An Amethyst. Which Hellraiser sequel is better than the first? Head orange covering eyes. Yeah, the first Hellraiser, best one. All right, part 2. So there's a lot about part 2 that's kind of like samey with the first movie. I think like it hits a lot of the similar beats that the first one does. The thing with part 2 is that it kind of does everything better. And I think this is the best directed of the franchise. I think like Steve Miner really has there's a snappiness to it. Like the pace is really good. Like the movie is over before you know it, and that's not a bad thing. Like it's just like it just moves along like silk. And initially, I think in my like review or like ranking that I did back in like 2020, this is like 4 years ago. Um, I kind of had this. It was like which is the better movie of like which is the best Friday the 13th movie, and I kind of like threw this one down a notch because I was the justification was that the opening scene, so like all of the Alice stuff and her nightmare, it was just so redundant because it just gave us bits of the first movie again, so it just felt like kind of cheap, and it was not really giving us new material to watch. And in a way it is, but like remembering back to that time where VHS wasn't really a household thing. So like if you didn't see these movies in the theater, you were not going to see it. So like these little previously on Friday the 13th were very helpful to some people. And that, I mean, now looking back on it in 2024, it's like, yeah, this is just, filler. But it's also doing a previously on of all of the best parts of the original that I talked about when I just ranked that, of like all the Betsy Palmer stuff. So I can't really fault it for that. I mean, that's not enough of a detriment that's going to, turn me off of the movie or like even really get me to complain about it. Like that's the thing. Like I used to be very nitpicky. I mean, I'm still nitpicky, but I probably was nitpicky over things that just did not matter. Because Friday the 13th Part 2 to me is an American original. This is not perfect. Like if this is a letterboxed scale, like I'd probably say 4.5. But this is one that I could watch endlessly. Like I said before, Amy Steele is my favorite. Love her character. I mean, I wish that there could have been more movies with her, but at the same time, there's like a novelty that this is the only one that she is in. Um, I just there's just a vibe to it. Like there's you watch this movie and it just like it's not even nostalgia. It just evokes like really unique horror memories that I don't get from a lot of the other Friday the 13th movies. So for me, that's why this one is top tier. Where's Paul? Exactly. Where is Paul? And that's another thing. Like that, the end of the movie, at least like the Jason, this Jason right over here, crashing through the window. Oh, I wish I would take off his hood because you can actually, he's got the face and the tusks of red hair and beard under there. But every time I take it off, it's impossible to get it back on. But just imagine that scene where he's crashing through the window. I guess like I just interpreted that as being not canon, but actually like Ginny's nightmare because Muffin is still alive, and we know Muffin got clobbered and potentially became the hot dogs that were eaten by the counselors. But yeah. That's where that is. Back in the day, people couldn't just look up what happened in the previous installment, so a synopsis helped. Yeah, like we are so lucky nowadays, just being in this time where like everything is accessible via YouTube or streaming or what have you. Because if we were all alive and of like movie watching age in the 80s, life would be very different. Life was very different. So, part three, 3D, part 3D. This is an interesting one for me because there's a lot to love and there's a lot to not love. This is Steve Miner coming back again to direct. And there's always been something about this installment to me that just feels a little bit cheaper. And I think a lot of that has to do with the 3D technology of it all. Now, granted, I've never seen this movie in proper 3D. I mean, like the once upon a time I had a DVD release of it that had like the little 3D glasses in them, like the little paper ones with the red and the blue. But that's not the same effect because you're watching it on your TV screen. It's not like when you're seeing it in the theater and there's like the double like projections to actually make it 3D. And I don't own a 3D television, which I guess part of. Oh, and I forgot I was taking these out as I was going through them. One, ha ha ha. Two, ha ha ha. Three, which, yeah, this I guess is a 3D Blu-ray, and I don't have a television that facilitates that. But from what I understand, watching it in 3D would be the best way to see this movie because there's not really any plot to this movie. Like, there's no mythology about Jason. Like, it's really weird if you actually like pay attention to the lack of what needs to be paid attention to in these movies. Jason Voorhees, the name is not uttered once out of any character's mouth. Like, it's just sort of, it's almost like they forgot what was going on or what the movie was, and they just sort of like, we're just gonna kind of make a movie about a barn, as Eric Champney would say. And it doesn't really like further any of the mythology because of that. It's just sort of like there's this backstory that Chris encountered Jason, and I mean, this is where like the continuity of the franchise really starts to get murky. I mean, it already kind of was with part two, but yeah, this one, it felt like they were more so concerned about like getting the shots of just like the 3D stuff, and all of it looks so tacky. And it kind of like harkens back to part one for me of just like the filler, because it just seems like there's a lot of set pieces that are specifically designed around this gimmick of the 3D. So nothing is really happening. There's just like a lot of long drawn out scenes of characters like wandering into said barn, coming out, going back to the barn. Like, we spend so much time in that barn. And amidst all that, there's fun to be had. This is a fun movie, and I will give it that. I always enjoy this one, but it always feels, kind of just like of the first five, we'll say, probably my least favorite, just because it feels like the lowest effort. So, I mean, this is still like a 3.5-star movie for me. Like, this is a Jesus Christmas, but it's still going to go below part one for me. Gibboni, part three is okay. Really missed an opportunity with Vera and Shelley getting a bigger role. And that's another thing. I thought that like Vera would have made a much better final girl. No offense to Dana Kimmel, but her character's never really interested me that much. Like, she's always felt like a final girl by default. She's like just the last one to show up. And I mean, you can use that same argument for Ginny in part two. But like Ginny had so much more depth as a character. There was so much more pathos and empathy for Jason and the legend of Jason, for her to actually kind of use that as part of her strategy to overcome him in the end. Where with Chris, she's just sort of like just getting tossed around and like hanging off of these barn rafters, and you can't be alive. And all those like weird, like, what does she walk into that cobweb? I never understood, like, what, and the inner monologue actually being outer monologue of just like, where's that coming from? I didn't leave this door open. So a lot of it seems like a little hokey. And this is also the movie where they started to film in California. Like the first two were filmed on the East Coast, and they have that look and that feel to them. And this one is like a man-made lake, and it just looks like a big swampy, muddy mess. So that always contributed to diminishing returns for me. Part four, the final chapter. By the way, if you guys don't know, I also have the podcast channel here on YouTube or wherever podcasts are streamable if you prefer to listen. But that is the Cherry Picker that I do with my friend Edward is Truth. So the current one this week, we did cover Friday the 13th, the final chapter. We'll probably do part 5 in December because I think there's another Friday the 13th coming up again this year. So if you want to check that out or check out all the Friday the 13th episodes or the podcast in general, I did include the link down below. But if it's not there, you can just look up the Cherry Picker. And we were joined by Jason, our editor, on that episode. So it was really fun. Really delved into the final chapter. So this one is kind of fresh in my mind right now just because of all that. So having said that, this was my favorite back in 2020 when I did the initial ranking. And this is a movie that, like, I always talk about, like, sometimes, like, nostalgia tinted goggles and, how we look back on certain things. And, when you see them again, they're just not as good as they used to be. And that kind of applies to this one for me. Like, I really love this movie, but I, watch it now and I just notice a lot of things where, like, oh, I think that this could have been done better. There could have been more developed here. And I think that a lot of that has to do with the Jarvis family in particular. And not that they felt like an afterthought. I think that, they're probably one of my favorite parts of it, but it does seem like they are sidelined a little bit for this, like, new slew of kids that come in. And again, it's like kids that are like, are these people actually friends? Like, I can buy, like, the 4 kids in the front seat, but then when you get to, like, the Crispin Glover, Jimmy, and Ted who are just sitting in the back, like, they're not friends with these guys. How did they get invited on that trip? It seems a little ridiculous. And so much of the movie is just them. And I feel like we lose a lot with the Jarvises because, I think about movies like Halloween 4 and Child's Play 2, where the strength of those movies really lies in the relationship between the siblings and sort of like the older sibling and protective of the younger one. So Kyle for Andy in Child's Play 2 and Rachel with Jamie in Halloween 4. And, we get that. It's present here, but it just feels like we're getting the bare minimum. And I especially think that when it comes to Tommy kind of relating to Jason, I feel like they could have done a lot more with him, or just like having Corey Feldman maybe even possessing the same sort of deformities that Jason had as a kid, and that could have been the thing that just sort of like bonded those two characters as to why Jason was entranced by him, or Tommy felt some sort of connection otherwise, because there was so much you could do with that, rather than just being like, I'm gonna shave my head and my skin tone, like the color just drains completely out of him in that final sequence before he hacks him up. I think that they could have done a lot more to add a little bit of emotional punch to all of that. But in terms of the kills and all that, I think that this movie does a really great job. It's Tom Savini is back after not being present in 2 and 3, so it really kind of adds to the quality of the film in that regard. So I can't say enough good things about it there. I love the opening of the movie too, just like the previously on segment, and then like kind of segueing into everything at Higgins Haven from part three and all the helicopters and the ambulances and just like how they clear out and there's nothing there. But other than that, like the rest of the opening scene is a little milk toast. Um, so I watch it now and I see like missed opportunities here and there, but it's still such a fun movie, and I much prefer human Jason than I do undead Jason. So in a way, this is like kind of where the franchise ends for me. Like yes and no, but this is Jesus Christmas. It's above the original for me. This is probably 3.5. I think all of these are 3.5 to varying degrees. He's killing me. He's killing me, says Rob. Where's Corkscrew? Did you know that Jason's condition is a real condition called hydrosyphilis? Am I saying that right? Syphilis? I don't know. Is that what it is? Fryhouse? Um, Bandit Dan, part four has the best kill. Seven would if it wasn't cut. Fun fact since you just did the Nightmare 4 pod, Elaine Parker's actress, Brooke Bundy's daughter, is Violet in part five. Ooh, that is very fun trivia. Yes, Nightmare on Elm Street 4 will be next week's episode. You can see it now, listen to it, or watch it now if you are supporting me on Patreon. The link is also available in the description down below. Amaranth, I can see Jason and Angela Baker being a couple. Well, isn't that cute? All right. Part five. Part five. Okay. This might be like the biggest amendment turnaround for me, because this was one that I always like really hated. And I think a lot of those reasons were because A, like Jason's not in it, uh, and B, it is really, really stupid. Like it is a stupid movie, but it leans into the comedy, it leans into the camp, and these are things that I've really like grown to appreciate, especially in this franchise, because it does it in a way that's still tonally consistent with what has come before it. And at this point, it just like my definition of camp has always been like unintentionally bad. Like it's so bad that it's good. And that's different than when camp is sort of like when you're trying to make something campy. So when you're trying to make it funny and goofy and all that, because I don't think that the intention with this movie, like it does not read like they were trying to make a comedic Friday the 13th movie. Like everything seems like it was trying to be very serious with the tone, but it just comes off absolutely ridiculous. So this is one that I watch now like very lovingly, because you can just laugh at the badness and kind of really take that in a positive way, at least for me. Because I don't really care if like Jason's not technically physically in it, and that we're at this halfway house or whatever you want to call it. I think also I haven't even mentioned Harry Manfredini, the composer on the first 10 movies. Just phenomenal. Like his score is the highlight of a lot of these for me, and there's something about the score for this one that I really love just a little bit more than the others. I can't even like really put my finger on it. It's just like this like very frenetic quality that they have with it. It's like a new beginning. So this one, I'm Jesus Christmas above the original, because it's just such a good time all the way through. I mean, like if you're like have never felt this movie, I suggest try watching it as though it was a comedy and see if that kind of changes your perspective on things. Because that's how I always watch Halloween 5, which is one of my favorite Halloweens. I know it's one that, people really don't like, and I understand why. But I always say, like, watch the movie as though it's a comedy. Don't watch it for being a serious Halloween movie, and you might have a better time. And that's how I feel about A Nightmare on Elm Street 5. Funny how that works with the five quills, or whatever you want to say. Everyone's saying bye, Sam. Oh, gotta run. See you later. Um, yeah. Um, Gosh, let me just catch up on some messages here. James Flanagan hated the Hillbillies in 5, and I'm from Alabama. Would that be Ethel and Junior? Because Ethel is like the MVP of that movie. Like there are many. There's Reggie as well, but Ethel is just something else. Edward, who I do the cherry picker with, he has a theory that Ethel is actually Crazy Ralph's, Ralph from 1 and 2, Crazy Ralph's wife, which is some interesting headcanon. Bobby A, I enjoy the twist that it's copycat Jason and that Tommy may be Jason, but I am not much of an F-13 fan. I only enjoyed F6, Jason Lives. Bruce Rando, the most graphic kill to me wasn't even by Jason. Which one was that? Is that like the belt around the tree, or like the scissors, or not scissors, but like the gardening shears, I guess, in the face? Did you know that Kane Hodder has played Jason? Yes, I did know that. Uh, Stephanie, hi friends. Yes, they're all awful. All right. So yeah, part 6 was mentioned, um, and that's where we are. Jason Lives, and so this is where a lot of people are going to be upset because this seems to be like unanimously a lot of people choose Jason Lives as the best Friday the 13th movie. And I do not. I was actually shocked. Like when I first started doing this YouTube thing to kind of realize that, because when I first watched all these movies, when I was probably like 14, I want to say, I did them in succession in chronological order. And when I got to 6, I remember just being kind of let down and just feeling like, what is this? This is like a complete departure from the tone of like what was set up before. Um, there wasn't really anything about it that was like overly memorable. Like it just seemed like it was too silly, too meta to me. And I never really kind of gravitated towards it in that way. Like it wasn't one that I wanted to revisit all that much. And because of that, because like my exposure at that point, like watching these movies on VHS, like renting them from the video store, and not really having like a current audience to talk about it with, because like my friends in school probably weren't really into horror, so they wouldn't have had any idea what I was talking about. So for the longest time, I just assumed that my opinion was the be all end all. I mean, kind of like how everything usually is on the internet. So lo and behold, the first time I do a ranking and I put part 6 much lower, just to a lot of people's dismay, and I find out that this is actually one that people really loved. I was shocked. Because I don't get it. There are some things that I get that I don't agree with people on, but there are certain times where there's something like I don't get, because this movie just frustrates me a lot to no end, and like I don't. It's the tonal shift. It's the fact that it is being presented as a comedy. It's a complete departure from what we're used to. And I don't know, like, kind of, no knock against like any of the actors or anything, but it's just like, it feels like it misses the mark with Tommy for me, just of like who Tommy was and then like kind of became in part five. And then now we're just kind of like swapping him out for the like hunky Tom Matthews to play the role. So it just felt like there's this dissonance in the character. I love all this, like Jason being resurrected, like all of that is really fun. But I feel like the mythology as well, it just seems like it's very convenient. There's like it's almost underwritten in a way where it's just like Tommy being like, this is how we have to kill him. There's never really any explanation. It's just sort of like you just accept it because it is. And I've always kind of had a problem with that. I would have liked a little bit more because the movie spends more time just being silly and you know going off on these set pieces, and they're fun. I don't want it to seem like I'm like bashing this movie and that I hate it. There's a lot to it that I like. I think that it's probably the most well produced of all of the movies up to this point, like of the ranking. It definitely looks like a lot crisper than what came before it, just by the very nature of its production budget. But it doesn't feel like Friday the 13th to me. And that's always been something that's kind of, turned me off of it. So this actually, and here we go, I can just hear all the unsubscribe buttons clicking. This is you need a little touch up work. And I keep forgetting to fucking pull. I'm just not even going to bother anymore because I will forget anyway. But yeah, this one it just needed a little something something, and it didn't have that for me. And there's also this hypocrisy that I don't really like in terms of the Halloween franchise, and I talked about Halloween 5. People always rag on the clown cops in Halloween 5, and they deserve it. They honestly, that is fair. These goofy assholes walking out of the house in the clown music pisses me off too. It's that, I can deal with it, but nobody ever talks about the bumbling like paintball guy with like the like army music as he's just like, rolling around from tree to tree. Like that to me is the exact same thing. In fact, it's more egregious here because we focus on it a lot longer and it keeps cutting back and forth between what's happening with these other people and him. So I almost feel like there's this double standard where, movies that I really love, like Halloween 5, get shit on for certain things that movies that everyone loves, does the exact same thing. But anyway, I digress. That's because I could just go on forever. And, we got another chapter here, part 7. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a return to form for the franchise. I know that this is completely different than what most people think, but this to me is a lot more evocative of like the Paramount era that we're in, but like the first 5 movies and the tone that was created there. And it's silly, it's ridiculous. It's like blending Carrie and Friday the 13th just with Tina and her telekinesis. And honestly, like it's really unfortunate that so much of this movie was hacked up because of this. I don't even know. It was like this one producer or a slew of them on the movie that just felt it was too violent. And then there was the thing with the dad, like at the end and not looking good enough for them. And then he ended up just looking like he had mud on him. Like all those like details that just got, kind of devalued or just stripped away completely. Because, this definitely had the potential to be one of the best of the franchise. And it's unfortunate that happened. But it's also unfortunate that a lot of people see that and are just like, well, this is just a bad movie because it's heavily censored, because I still think that there's a lot of value in this. I really love the nature. I mean, I was making fun of it earlier, of just like how there's this motley crew of teenagers, and none of them really seem like they would be friends with one another, but they're all here because it's just this smorgasbord of victims for Jason to essentially feast upon, and that is exactly what he does. And it's just in no other movie than here. I feel it's streamlined in such a great way. It's just unfortunate that the blood and the gore had to be taken out, but I love that you do have that emotional core with Tina, and kind of coming to terms with her power and all that, and then facing off against Jason. It's a lot of these movies are samey because of like it's just rinse and repeat, and this one feels like, okay, at least it's doing something different story wise, but while keeping the tone consistent. And that's what I've always appreciated about this one. So this is Jesus Christmas to me. I'm just wondering, is it above or below? I'm gonna say it's above the original, because it's like there's a through line that is enjoyable to watch. With one, it's like we're biding our time until Betsy Palmer shows up. So yeah, I'm gonna put it above the original. Let's check in on the comments. Also, remember, if anyone wants to send a super chat, that'll bump your comment. Bandit Dan, I love Seven. It would have the best collection of kills if it wasn't so heavily censored. Amaranth, okay, I'm going to say something that's probably going to get me jumped, but part 7 is my favorite. Oh, look at all this love for part 7. See, I love when people can just be honest. Just you don't have to conform to the crowd. Just let your freak flag fly and just say what you want to say. Just own your favorite movies, no matter how bad they are. 7 is one of the better ones, says Amethyst. Fry House, Little Girl Tina also played Little Girl Sawyer in TCM 3. That she did. Giboni, if part 7 had kept its unedited kills, this would be strong contender for number 1. Plus, it has an amazing fire stunt. Yeah, and this is the introduction of Kane Hodder as well. And like the whole thing, like there's obviously, it's arguable like who's the best Jason. And I don't know if Kane Hodder is particularly my favorite, but I do appreciate what he does with the character. And there's a physicality to him that, really kind of reinvented the role to keep him around for 4 movies. But I always enjoyed him here. I love the effects of like just the way that the makeup looks, like when the mask cracks off, like that's all really fun and good. Well, it was a motley crew generation. It certainly was. All right, now we're at part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. And oh my gosh, this one is really difficult for me to watch. And there's a lot of criticisms about this one, but I think the primary one for me is that I find it really boring. It's really long. I think it's got the longest runtime, at least of the Paramount ones. But like you can feel it, and by the end of it, like when they're running around like Times Square and like through diners and into the sewers, it's just like, can we just wrap it up already? That's always been my impression. So that's a strike against it. I feel like the main characters, like the couple, they're awful. I hate those two. Not the actors. I feel like I always have to make sure that I'm being protective of the people who played them, because it's not always their fault. And we shouldn't lump the two together. But those two characters, they were the worst. And Rennie and Sean. I mean, first of all, she's just kind of walking through this whole movie like she's half awake. Like she literally is drugged for the second half, but just like very little personality. It's just like here's a final girl who just has to be as dull as bricks, and she ends up like causing more harm than good. She literally gets in the car with all of them, literally drives it into a wall because she hallucinates Jason as a boy or whatever, and that ends up killing her teacher, her mentor, like the one person who was like the nicest to her. And there's no like consequences or reprimand or like, oh my god, what have I done? Like there's a moment where they're like, oh, oops. So that really pisses me off. The guy who's like the son of the captain of the ship makes this. He just decides that he's in charge once his father is killed, and all like of the other adults, like the slimy uncle or whatever. Even though like he's kind of a villain, he was making sense about certain things, but this kid comes in and the adults are like, we have to rescue the others, and he's just like, there's no one else to rescue, we need to go. I'm like, how do you know that? You're just making this decision based on no evidence, because there were tons of other students on that ship. So this guy basically condemned everyone to death, and for what? Because he felt that he had some sort of dominion over this ship because it was his father's. So those two pissed me off. It really chaps my ass that they were around the longest, because I felt like the more interesting characters were killed off earlier on, like Tamara, the mean girl. Would have been great if she made it to New York City, aka Vancouver, which of course is another bone of contention with this movie, is the fact that we're not really in New York. Like most of it takes place on a ship, and that's all well and good. I think that the ship is a fun setting, but it is when you finally do get to New York, it feels so underwhelming, because you're not really in New York. You're just sort of like in this shipyard and back alleys, and it's obviously they went to Times Square for like the one scene, but this is also why I don't really like Scream 6. I mean, of a plethora of reasons, because there was no reason for Scream 6 to be set in New York. It could have literally been anywhere. And it was almost like a detriment to set it there and kind of offer us this promise as something that was going to be really exciting, and then to just sort of give us any town. So horror movies in general, like don't set them in New York. Come on, let's learn our lesson here. So for a whole bunch of reasons, and the like Jason at the end, when when the mask gets thrown off or falls off or whatever, like the design of him has always looked really silly to me, and not in a fun way. So this one is Say Hi to Mommy in Hell. Unfortunately, I know that it has its followers, but it's not one that I particularly love, and that's mostly because I find it to be very boring, unfortunately. Okay. I never liked Jason breathing like Darth Vader, or Jason covered in mood. Jason in mood. I guess mud. He was really slimy in part 8. Like I did actually like that. I like that there's kind of there's nuance to every iteration of Jason as you go through the movies, and that's something I've always appreciated. I appreciate it more with Jason than I do with Michael Myers, because so much, like, it's easy to kind of have a hockey mask. Like Jason's look for the mask doesn't really require all that much like effort, not even effort, but just like specific detail. Like you just have to have the mask. It's easy to replicate that. But a Michael Myers mask, like, more work needs to be done in that. And the Halloween franchise has missed the mark on that more than whatever they have in Friday the 13th. C. Snide, the right way to do it is like Jurassic Park, winding up in San Diego doesn't need to be in the title. Yeah. Joe W. I feel like an NYC was chosen for Scream 6 so they would have to walk a lot and so that they could have subway scenes. I mean, fair, but this isn't a Scream ranking, so I'm not gonna harp too much on Scream. Legend Daily. Also, the timeline in Part 8 doesn't work because how could Rennie see Jason as a child? The timeline doesn't add up. It was definitely a hallucination or something. Exactly. That's another thing. Like this movie, more than anything else, just like takes the timeline and just flushes it down the drain, right into the toxic sewer. So yeah. Tamara's sidekick was reborn as Lady Deathstrike in X2. That is correct. I always remember seeing it. What's her name again? Kelly Wu. No, Kelly Hu. Yeah, that's it. All right, we're in the New Line era. We're out of the Paramount into the New Line. And yeah, okay. Jason goes to hell. Yeah. So this one, it's the funny thing about Jason Goes to Hell is that every time I start to watch it, I get excited because I'm just like, I don't remember what this movie's about. Like it's almost like I'm seeing it for the first time. And then I start to watch it and then I'm waiting and I'm waiting and nothing is happening. And then we're like 45 minutes in and there's this huge expo dump about all this mythology and none of it makes any sense. And it's just like, this movie's a total mess. And it's like not in a good way. Like there's something to be said for story structure and good storytelling, and none of that is present in this movie. Like it's very confusing. It's not even trying. It's just sort of throwing everything they have at the wall and seeing what sticks. And it's a disaster. Like on a multitude of levels. It's a suck fest of the suckiest of all sucking. And it's yeah, like I have to put this at the bottom because where's Jason? It starts off very promising. I think that the opening scene is great. They blow the shit out of him. Where do they go from there? And then it's just like, well, it turns out not really anywhere. You kind of killed the movie in the opening scene. And we wait all this time. Like, it's just like Jason shows up again in the last 5 minutes, maybe. So we're just kind of watching this like gross little nasty lizard thing possessing people. And I will give Jason Goes to Hell this. Like the effects are pretty cool. I was gonna say gnarly, but that felt dated. And so does cool. What did they say nowadays? The effects in Jason Goes to Hell 8. But yeah, it's like everything, like it looks really cool. Like that's the thing, like the design of it. I love like the design of Jason, like that mask and just sort of like the whiskey hair and all that. But the story around it is just it's incomprehensible. And as Alfred Hitchcock once said, like the three most important things to a movie are the script, and the script. And if you don't like that's the front of the line, like that's the first line of defense. And if you don't have that, it's just it just goes downhill from there. So this is one that's confusing to me. Like there's the diner scene, which is kind of gives me Natural Born Killers. I like that. But the fact that I forget this movie because there's really nothing to remember, like it doesn't really speak all that much to it. So That's why this sucks on so many levels. Bruce Rando, thank you for the super chat, 7.99. The opening was cool, then they blow the shit out of Jason. Yeah, pretty much. I liked it. It was off to a good start. It seemed really promising. I want to see the rest of that movie that was of that original scene, the tone that was set there. Uh, Eric says the effects slap. Yeah, the effects slap. When I hear that, I think of the daughter in Trap when she says to Josh Hartnett, like, "Oh, Dad, these seats slap." They should have called the movie Slap, not Trap. I'm terrible. Bruno Salata. Hi, Zach. Hi, Bruno. Jaboni, I'm just going to say it. I like part 9 better than part 6. That is fair. You are certainly entitled to that opinion. Isaac, wasn't Jason cremated? Said in part 5. Yeah, but they lied. That's the thing. It's like Jason kind of became this urban legend, and like nobody had the facts straight. And then we get this Freddy Krueger tease at the end, and you would have to wait 10 full years for that. That's another thing, yeah. It just seemed like the impetus for Jason Goes to Hell was to kind of merge these franchises, and it's that was the whole, like, the sole purpose. Like Sean Cunningham and I guess Bob Shea were just like, "Okay, this is the plan. We're gonna do this. So you have to make a movie that somehow, like it was the whole thing is a means to an end. Let's just say that. So the whole movie is just a setup for this Freddy versus Jason thing, which doesn't even really amount to, like, it just, we have to wait 10 years. There's another movie in between. Boy Cried Wolf, which would be Judge Judy's favorite entry. What movie would Judge Judy like the most? I don't know. That's such a random question. I love it. Amethyst, Judge Judy, don't pee fire on my leg and tell me it's a resurrection of Freddy Krueger. Did the dog pee on? No, he just went and like sniffed a little at the end. Rashim, I like that part 6 leans into the camp and the way Jason kills the sheriff. It bends him backwards too, yeah. Like a fold up bed. So it makes me think of Freddy versus Jason. Yeah, I don't know what Judge Judy would like. But if I ever meet Judge Judy, I'm going to ask her. It's like, Judge Judy, you know the Friday the 13th franchise? Yeah. Like, well, which one's the best? I have a feeling that she would say part 2. Just instinct. All right. Now we're at Jason X. Holy crap. I used to love Jason X. Like Jason X, if you asked like how old was I when this came out? 2002. This was 2002, right? Oh my gosh, why can't I do math? 2000 and okay. Calculator. I'm so embarrassed. 17-year-old Zach. If you asked him which is the best Friday the 13th movie, well, Jason X, of course. Like what the heck? Why would I say that? I watch this movie now and I just get kind of like it again, it feels so cheap to me. Like it's just like it's a really ugly looking movie, and I feel bad saying that because obviously people put a lot of effort into this movie. I think this was probably one of the more expensive ones to make, but it's all the CGI. It's just this came at a time where that's what studios were doing. They're like, let's make everything with CGI, and it just looks so horrible and dated now. Gosh, I was watching Die Another Day, the James Bond movie, also 2002, um, and it's so hard to watch in places because it looks like bullshit. And that's mostly what I feel about this one. And it's doing the Jason Lives thing. Like it's just like being very meta. And I think like now, like, well, with this one, probably more because it's coming off of the heels of Scream. And this was made in 1999. Like it took a long time to to get this into the theaters. Um, but it already felt, I mean, retrospectively, like it feels dated by the time that it did come out. And it just, I know that the intentions for it were for the best. I know that they wanted to make something that was more in the tone of Alien or Aliens. And it just, unfortunately, just with I guess the budget that they had, and I guess like the vision that they had, it was just something that wasn't able to be made. So this to me, like, it always looks like it's sort of, I guess this is more of a Canadian reference, but like something that you would see on YTV. Like there's a, or I guess maybe like Nickelodeon would be the American equivalent, but just like it just looks like shabby sets, and like it's just all really fake. And like they're having a good time making it. Like they're having a good time in the script, but I get like really tired of the gimmick of it all very quickly. I will say that it has my favorite kill, which is the uh, the freezing face shattered, whatever you want to call that, um, which is just, it's brilliant. It was amazing. And I mean, other than like a little bit of CGI there, like the practical effects that they used for it looked really good. So I respect that, but it was, this was a time where these franchises were just sort of like, they were just vehicles, like money makers for these studios. So they didn't really care. There wasn't really much thought put into what was happening. And this is a movie that like literally wrote the franchise into a corner. Not that there was ever really kind of like a trajectory for any of these movies, but it felt like this is kind of it. Same with Halloween Resurrection and stuff. It's just like, we don't even care. We're just going to put shit out there. And this one's always felt like that to me. So, and also the music. I know this is Harry Manfredini still, but like the once the New Line ones started transitioning to that, like they just didn't sound very good. I know, put Jason X under Manhattan because aesthetically, I still enjoy Manhattan for what it is. It just still has the tone of the earlier ones. But unfortunately, Jason X going from like 16-year-old Zach's number one spot is a lot lower nowadays. Super chat from Nathan Pollock. Thank you for the $2. What F13 fan films do you enjoy? I've only seen like the Never Hike Alones. And by the way, I should actually take this opportunity. Thank you, Nathan, for shouting out Womp Stomp Films and Vincent DeSanti, who, I mean, as a lot of you know, I am making my own horror movie with Eric Champney, who is, I believe, still in the chat here. But yeah, we're making a horror movie, and we did run a Kickstarter campaign where we were able to raise over $50,000 towards the budget of this movie, which is really awesome. And we owe a great deal of that to Vincent and Womp Stomp Films, who is the creator behind Never Hike Alone. And actually, right now, he's running a campaign on Kickstarter for the final cut of Never Hike Alone. So you should check that out. And if you are interested in Macabre, which is Eric and my our horror movie. The campaign is over, but if you do want to contribute, still, we do take private donations, and we will be happy to hook you up with rewards and whatnot. But we do plan on running another campaign in the future at some point. But it's really exciting because we're in pre-production for that right now. We're going to be filming in November, and yeah, we're really excited. You can check out the videos on my channel here, the last couple of months, and the live streams if you want to. Like, there's a playlist, so you can kind of get caught up and find out more about that if you're just kind of hearing about it for the first time. But yeah, I appreciate Nathan, you asking about the fan films, because I appreciate Vincent and Womp Stomp Films for their help. And yeah, go check out his current Kickstarter campaign, Never Hike Alone. So, having said that, Joe W says Macabro strong. That's right, you could become a Macabro. It's so weird to see my name on IMDb. Amethyst is one of our associate producers, so that is part of the rewards for Macabre, is that you can actually have your name as a credit on IMDb. Let me go to Macabre right now. And it's there. You can see it. Yeah. We got all the producers. So you can just see like all these people who contributed to the campaign and now have IMDb credits. Just pretty damn cool. All right. 2 more movies left. Freddy versus Jason. And I don't know what I want to do with Freddy versus Jason. Because Freddy versus Jason is another one. I'm not bored by Freddy versus Jason. I mean, I am a little, but not in the same way that I am with, say, Jason Goes to Hell or Manhattan. It's just like, I watch it, like when I start watching it, I know what's coming, and I just have no enthusiasm for it at all. I mean, like, this is still like, this is more of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie to me. And just in full transparency here, like, Nightmare on Elm Street is not a franchise that I particularly care about all that much. I think for me, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is 1, 3, and New Nightmare. So just like all of the Nancy ones. Because other than that, I don't really have an affinity towards them. So this movie, because obviously this is New Line, it feels more Freddy Krueger heavy than Jason. So it's weird to even consider this a Friday the 13th movie. But it's like, remember how earlier when I was talking about the original and how that, even though it's a very basic movie, it's just kind of like hitting all of the right chords. It's just doing everything perfectly, just in terms of like what it's ripping off from the slasher genre. I feel like Freddy versus Jason is just, it's doing all the surface level things of the Friday the 13th franchise, but all the wrong things. It's just like the homages and all that. It's just like, it's all the stuff that just looks good, or just like the people kind of associate with Friday the 13th, but there's none of the heart underneath it, if you could even call it the heart. There's none of the core essence of what Friday the 13th is under that. And it feels weird, and it feels like, it's that postmodern era of horror. Like, we've already kind of moved past the screams at this point. This is 2003, and we're getting into the mid 2000s, which I think were just a miserable time for the genre, where everything was kind of like getting a little like, not even like ultra violent, but just sort of like like gore, and in this case like not even good gore, just like CGI gore, and like more of like this like heavy metal mentality, just like the soundtracks, and like we've got raves going on. It's just like the temperament of this movie has never sat right with me. And I think at its core, the thing that I really that like really takes me out of this movie are the characters, because I don't like any of them. Not a single one of them. Like they're all awful people. I can't get behind their story. You know, at least in Goes to Hell, Stephen Freeman, I remember his name. Um, you know, like you somewhat like the guy. You're interested in following his story. It's not like all that great, but you can at least get on board with it. With this, it's like they make everybody so unlikable from the get-go that it's like you just don't care. And it's not even a point to like where you're like rooting for them to get killed, because there's so much emphasis put on their story, and like especially with Lori, and like this whole thing where I guess Freddie killed her mother, and this, you know, like I want to see Freddie die and I'm not gonna leave until that happens, or whatever her thing is. And then Kelly Rowland, and just like oh like even the ones like, and these are like the characters that you're supposed to like, because you got the like the Trays and the um whatchamacallits, who like the guy who's like bent up in the bed and all that. Like everyone is just written like they're so written. Like they're it's a difference between the cliche of like the Part 7 characters, where it's this motley crew of just sort of like just picking all these different like archetypes, to this where it's just sort of like what do teenagers say, like how do they act nowadays? Like we're not actually going to give them any personality, we're just sort of going to give them I guess like traits or shit. So Flip Thunder says, I thought Lori and Will were okay characters. I mean, that's fair. The girl with the red hair who called Freddy the F slur made me cringe so many times. F Vis J is way too broy. Yeah, that's another thing. Like it's just got these vibes to it that it's not fun. It's just like it feels like it just takes the piss out of like all the good things that I really love about horror. So yeah, it's where does it go? Where does it go though? Is it worse than Jason X? Is it better than Jason X? Like it's either above or below. And there's a lot of pressure on me right now. Where do I put it? I'm just trying to give value to. I'm gonna put it above Jason X, because even though there's a modicum of fun to be had with Jason X, like it's so shabby that it becomes hard to watch. With Freddy versus Jason, I feel like I can at least watch it. Like it's not as offensive to me. I'm just trying to justify this. I don't even know how many people are still around. 69. 67 thumbs up, one thumb down. I get that's a pretty good ratio. I'll take it. Where are we? Unironically, sorry, Isaac. Unironically, I like the sunken mask in Jason Goes to Hell. Yeah, that was cool. And the look of Jason and Freddy versus Jason, I've never liked that look. Like he just like he looks like he's got seal skin. Like it's just like he looks like a seal or an otter. It's weird, and his head feels very like peanutty. The eye is on the wrong side. Like they really just did not care at all. Faith, Ayana, love your Ghostface hat. That was a gift from Sarah Campbell. Thank you. Amethyst. They should have just wiped out all those teens and made Alice from Nightmare and Tommy from Freddy the leads. That's what I thought. Like originally when Freddy versus Jason was announced, that was, as far as I knew, the idea for it. Boy Cried Wolf agrees. Def better than Jason X. Dang, Friday Part 8 actually got higher than Freddy vs. Jason. That's a new opinion. I don't think that's a new opinion. Show of hands, who would rather watch Jason Takes Manhattan than Freddy vs. Jason? I'm going to challenge you on that, Flip Thunder. I'm going to challenge you on that because I think that that's not a new opinion. I think that that's a pretty standard opinion, but we'll see. We'll see what's being said. Freddy versus Jason was a cultural moment for the genre. Amethyst, you should read Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, the Nightmare Warriors for that. Says Dan's Gaming. Screw that thumb. I'm gonna say that in like the way that Nancy would say it. Screw that thumb. I tried. Jason's sudden fear of water annoyed me so much. That too. Just the lack of attention to just basic continuity. Iggy, thank you. Definitely prefer 8. See, I knew I had people in my corner for that one. Rashim, Freddy versus Jason. That Jason was built like a wrestler. I want to watch Freddy versus Jason. Friday 8 is better than FVJ. Thank you, EJ Webbs. Eric, 8 better than FVJ. Thank you. I mean, the head punch kill in Manhattan is just too good, but the lead couple sucks. If we're going, what's his name? Lori and is it Will? Lori and Will. Okay, they're maybe up here. Rennie and Sean down here. But I don't know if I'd have to watch them both back to back again, and I'm not in the mood for that. James Flanagan says Freddy versus Jason. Okay. Fair. Friday 8 has the best kills. The decapitation was awesome. Jason's fear of water wasn't in the original script. I found that out from Dead Meat's kill count. Yeah, was he? I mean, if he was afraid of the water, why was he in the lake in the first place? So yeah, Lori and Will suck too. Thank you, Blue Box. Lori didn't crash a car into a brick wall. That is a very good point. Actually, I have more of an appreciation for Lori because Monica Keena is just hysterical in interviews when she talks about the character. Like, she is in on the joke. She knows that it is a dumb movie. But anyway, now we're at the end. We're at the remake. Not really a remake, kind of a remake. Reimagining. Here's the thing. It's like, this is not a remake. It's like the remake happened, but it never existed. And we saw like the end of it. And this is like the sequel to that remake. That's the way that I can best explain this. So in a way, this is almost like when they made this movie, they're like, we're going to meld parts 1 to 4 together, and that's going to be this movie. And there's aspects of all of that. You know, we see the Whitney, who's kind of like, you know, evoking the energy of Ginny in part 2 with like the, you know, pretending to be the mother, done much less successfully in terms of the results in the story and the execution of the production. You've got sort of the part 3 of like the kids hanging out at the cabin for the weekend, and I guess like the final chapter of it all is the like the sibling connection there for like the Clay and Whitney of it all. I think that this movie is good. Like it's I'm trying to find the words to describe it. I think the first 20 minutes, like the opening, is very high octane. And I remember that being kind of my favorite part. And then after that, it's sort of just like the rest of the movie happens. So it never really kind of lives up to where it starts. But the rest of the movie is okay. Like it's pretty decent. And I think that as far as like the remake culture goes, of just all like the slew of all these movies that they were remaking at the time, Friday the 13th is one of the better ones. Um I don't I mean I think that I would probably say this is a 3-star movie. I feel like there's still it needs some touch up work. I enjoy it more than Jason Lives, personally. Um, but yeah, this is just by the very nature of just that what it is. I think that it's better because it's not just a straight up remake. It is like it's almost like a sequel in an alternate reality, and that helps me through it a little bit more. There's some surprises in it. I don't think everything works exactly the way it should, and I don't think that it really evokes the spirit of Friday the 13th. Like there's what's the director's name, because he also did the TCM remake. Is it Marcus Nispel? There's definitely part of this that feels more like Texas Chainsaw Massacre than Friday the 13th, and I think that's evident in the fact that like this was shot in Texas as well. But I think that Jason himself, like I really liked that kind of return to form for him, in a sense that he is more along the lines of like just like who he was earlier on. Like he's got a as Rashim is saying here, the reboot gives us more of a stalker style Jason. I think Derek Mears did a good job, and I agree with that. I think that there's, it's kind of a shame that they weren't able to carry on with that thread of movies, just in terms of continuing to make them. And I mean, at this point, it's been 15 years now. With like this is the longest we've gone without a Friday the 13th movie. But yeah, like I'm not a fan of the remake trend. But I think that this, even though it's mid tier, that's pretty high for where I put most of the remakes that have come out. So I think this is my ranking. So starting at the bottom, this sucks on so many levels. Just the one, just Jason Goes to Hell, which if it had a better script and a story that I could follow along with more, like it probably would have been higher. But this one for me, it's really hard to ascertain anything that's going on, and for that reason, I can't enjoy it. It's just like stuff happening. Jason X is just kind of too silly and too shoddy looking. Like it comes down to just like production mostly, and the tone. Freddy versus Jason, kind of a slog for me. For all the mid 2000s reasons, Jason Takes Manhattan is just mostly boring to me, long and arduous to get through. Moving up, Jason Lives, great production value. There's a lot that works for it, but it's still just it's the tonal shift that kind of takes me out of it. Remake went up from that, which again, just I wish it felt more like a Friday the 13th movie. But for what it is, it's pretty decent. And now we're up in the Jesus Christmas and literally like all the what I consider is like most of the Paramount movies. Just a really fun time. Like these are all consistent for me. Part 3 is the lowest just because it feels like it's the lowest effort in terms of just what the movies could be. like it's a windstorm instead of a rainstorm at the end. Like it's just like you can feel like the budgetary restraints, or they might not even have been budgetary restraints, but just like certain things that they had to do because they um, prioritized the 3D technology of it all, which I feel is like just was a hindrance to the whole thing. The original after that, because it's mostly just the finale of it that is what's so fabulous. Part seven, again, would have been higher if it wasn't so cut down. Part five is just a hoot. I love it all the way through. You got to watch it as a comedy, though. Final chapter, solid entry. I just wish that there was more to do with the Jarvises. And then part two. Part two is the only one that's really like that I consider to be in like that god tier. It's my favorite. I love Sackhead Jason. I got him right here. Um, yeah, I just think it's the cleanest. I think it's just the best directed. The pacing is really good. The characters are all memorable, like especially Ginny, my favorite, final girl. And it's doing everything that the original did, but just exponentially better. Uh, uh, I I don't know if I have any gripes. The original gripe was just that the opening scene was just kind of that previously on Friday the 13th. But even then, it's like it's showing us the best part of the first movie. So yeah, I think that this is where I land on all of that. Zach, are you looking forward to the Peacock series? They got a new showrunner. I don't. I'm not like. We need more info. We like. They haven't even made it yet. Obviously, like that's. I feel like everything's kind of been pushed back because of that. Um, it'll be interesting to see how the show kind of does as a series, and that's not counting the original Friday the 13th series, which I actually never watched, but didn't have anything to do with Jason Voorhees. But yeah, I don't know. Like I would have really wanted to see what Brian Fuller had done with the show. I don't know who these new showrunners are. I don't know what their agenda is or their end goal. At this point, I mean, maybe it just makes more sense to make a movie, but I don't like again, it's like the legal rights, which are so complex. Every time I hear, like Larry Zerner, who played Shelley in Three, who's like an entertainment lawyer, he, you know, puts videos, I've seen them on Twitter, where he's explaining the whole thing, like trying to simplify it, and it's goes way over my head. I don't understand it at all. It's so confusing. I wish they could just make these movies again. Because I mean, they're gonna miss the mark. I mean, like it's like the Halloweens came out, but at the same time, I don't. Maybe it's best to not rush it. Maybe like put a little bit more thought into it. The thing that I want, I like what I absolutely would hate is if they did the Halloween thing where they ignore the movie. Like even though there's not really much of a continuity here, but the thing that really pissed me off about the new Halloween movies is how they kind of had this attitude about themselves that like, well, we don't really have to regard those movies because what we're doing, this is like the proper timeline. And they ended up making a timeline that is so divisive, probably even more divisive than the Thorn trilogy or the Laurie Strode H2O timeline. So it's just like it's that kind of that like egotistical elitist attitude of just like, well, this is the only movie that matters now. I would hate for that to happen. I mean, I would be happy to see a remake of like the Jarvis storyline. Like I'd love to see them like reinvent that and do like the things that I was talking about in terms of just like how to kind of shift the character of Tommy to make him a little bit more nuanced in terms of like how he relates to Jason and go from there and kind of like focus on that sibling relationship. I think that what I would do, speaking personally, if I was like given the reins to make a new Friday the 13th movie, I would sit through, I would literally watch them all and I would pick and choose the things that worked the best out of those movies. And not like surface detail things, but just like what innately made those movies so special, like the essence of those movies, which is, what, Eric and I did when we were looking for the inspiration for Macabre, when we were writing that script. So it's hopefully whoever ends up having it is just someone who understands the genre on a deeper level than just, listening to a million different fans who are all pulling the franchise in different directions. Because when you try to make everyone happy, you end up making nobody happy. Um, but yeah, Jennifer Coolidge should play Mrs. Voorhees. I've said this before. I think that would be fun. That'd be like kitsch. I see it more of like the way that Jennifer Tilly is in the Chucky franchise, to just have Jennifer Coolidge play Mrs. Voorhees. That might be fun. Um, you never know. Stranger things have happened. Amethyst. Well, I don't think Jamie Lee Curtis is coming to the Friday the 13th revival, so we should be okay. I mean, yeah, but still, just like on the production side of things, it wasn't just Jamie. Um, but yeah, Mark and Part Two was one of the cutest Friday guys. The wheelchair guy. What a mean spirited kill that was. Um, anyway, I think I'm gonna head her because ranking is done. We chatted about everything we could chat about. So let's say goodbye. Say goodbye, Jason. What is he? What is with his hand? Anyway, bye, 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 everybody. Thank you for watching. Hope you all had a wonderful Friday the 13th. I might go watch part two right now. But yeah, I will be right back.